That is why we have dispensed with the introduction part. Otherwise, before every speaker, someone is to come and introduce him. It is sufficient to say that this legendary personality, the legendary thinker, changed the entire attitude of the corporate world. It's one initiative, National HRD Network, which was his brainchild, changed the entire corporate offices in one day. All the HR department rechristened themselves as HRD department, and I think Sir will talk about that. Not only that, the word which we are repeatedly speaking, attitude, knowledge, skill, as part of the personality requirement from management graduates, were coined, explained, and enforced into the minds of the professional by this Dr. T.V. Rao. Sir, today it was my fortune, I was fortunate to invite Sir to our one of the HR meets long back. And there were 6 fortunate students who got the opportunity to go and do a project, company project studies with him, and all of them are doing exceptionally well today. Sir, on behalf of all the students, I extend you a very warm welcome and request you to address the students. The podium is all yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Wonderful. That's a very, very nice welcome from all of you. And I want to thank Bala sir. Sir, it is so nice of you. I think you are a great institution builder. You've started such a great institution, and I'm fortunate to be able to visit on this particular day. It was just one mail from you that made me to immediately respond. And you have been continuously supporting National HRD Network. And I don't think the Bangalore conference would have been such a great success but for your support. And I think the Hyderabad also is expecting. The only wish I have is that those students who happen to be attending such conferences should spend more time, besides doing all the other kind of a thing, learning from various people who come there. You don't get much of an opportunity to meet such a wonderful kind of people, 1,000, 1,500 graduates. Most often, I think when you sponsor a conference, you play a good support role, but sometimes we tend to forget a learning role. I think, in fact, I had a nasty idea of converting every conference that you sponsor into a equivalent to a course or 2 courses, and after the students come back, give a paper on. I don't know if you already do that. If you have administratively supported, then you should write a paper on what kind of administrative experience you have and what can you learn as a manager in managing the event. Event management and the kind of people you meet is a wonderful thing. And if you happen to be sitting through any of the courses, any of the lectures, then I think you should be able to summarize and so on. The reason why I say this is most of the time when you hold HR conventions like this, and I'm so happy that you're not doing what most institutions do. The other day, I happened to address one management school. There were about 200 and odd students who pestered me to go and visit them and address the HR conclave. When I went there, I found that most of the students were busy taking care of the dignitaries. And finally, when I began my lecture, none of the students were in the class. They were mostly outside because they had to take care of the so-called dignitaries and make arrangements and so on. So the actual content part of it, I felt bad that is missed. But I'm so happy to see all of you sitting in this room, waiting to hear whatever I've got to say. So that's very nice. So I think this is something which your institution has been doing wonderful thing, and it has been a great pleasure to visit this institute. I made sure that I virtually visited your campus, and I was already impressed 2 days ago when I went onto the website and saw the 360-degree panoramic view of your institute and a whole lot of things and so on. I certainly look forward to interacting with you. I hope I'll have more opportunity to have this interaction. Now, I got into a big dilemma in preparing for this morning's address. You called it HR kind of a conference. The focus is on HR. And I am quite often identified as a HR person. Although I started National HRD Network, we started the first human resource development department in this part of the world, actually in the world, I think. I don't think in 1974, anywhere in the world, there is a department called as Human Resource Development Department. We conceptualized it, but thanks to the line managers of Larsen & Toubro, they are the ones who gave the idea. They didn't give the name, but they said, we would like to have, they said that the personal function is not doing the kind of things that they could do. We would like to have a function which can help us to continuously learn in this corporation. We can learn from our seniors, we can learn from our juniors, we can learn from various events. So a department which facilitates learning and makes people enjoy the workplace. That is the whole concept of human resource development. We say competence building, we say commitment building and culture building. These are the three things Human Resource Development Department does. Of course, the rest of it is quite a bit of history. After we started the first HRD department, then Larsen & Toubro instituted a chair at XLRI, and when they were about to give it to somebody, I said that no, I'm not going to let this happen. We want certain things to happen. Started a center for HRD, then started the Academy of Human Resource Development, and of course, it was a brainchild of the National HRD Network and so on. So the problem I had was that if I only talk of HR, it would only cater to the interests of only a few of you. I normally prefer a dialogue rather than giving a lecture. But I have an important thing. As I was coming from airport, I came prepared to change my speech, to change whatever I want to say. And as I was coming from the airport, two of your friends, I think they are standing here, I was chatting with them. They said, I asked them, what are the expectations? They said, one of the expectations we have, their personal expectations, is that what is it that the industry wants from us? We would like to know what are the kind of things and what are the jobs that we are likely to perform and what are the kind of things that we are. Now here, just about last year, I conducted a survey and I thought I'll spend about 10-15 minutes. I'm going to run through this pretty fast, but I will leave the presentation here for your use. This will help you in terms of understanding what is it that the industry expects. We conducted this survey as a part of the work we were doing. Now, we found a very interesting book written by one Srikant Datar, a professor at Harvard University, on rethinking MBA. So that's about a couple of years ago. Is there anybody who is aware of this book? Who read this? Please raise your hands. Okay. Not many of you may have. Well, practically none in this room. Anybody among the faculty here? It's a very interesting book. He visited all the recruiters about 2 to 3 years ago in US, those who recruit various management schools in US, and asked them the question, what are they disappointed with the US MBAs and what are they happy about and what are the gaps? And he came up with 10 competencies for US. He said, this is what the management education should focus upon. And he wanted this to be repeated in India. And when I read the book, I said that, look, all the 10 competencies you have identified in US, a good number of them, India is doing it for the last 20 to 30 years. Change management. There was a course in IIM Ahmedabad on change management for 30 years. Uday Parikh used to teach it. Leadership. Soft skills. We used to conduct a T-group based kind of a program. Not only IIM, I think many of the institutions started doing it. But still, we went ahead and then got the recruiters, and this is what the recruiters have got to say. I'm going to run through fast, just to give you some glimpses of what the recruiters expect from you. So this is the first part of my talk. The second part of my talk is going to be relating to the theme that you have in mind. This is the methodology we used was we talked to the supervisors and recruiters of MBAs representing various types of organizations, drawn from private sector, MNCs, banks, financial institutions, PSUs, PSBs, public sector banks, and so on. About 20 to 30 institutions seem to be preferred places for recruitment. This is what we discovered. Some of them classify them as a Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. I just overheard, if I may reveal the secret, that you are rated as number 28 in the entire 3,000 colleges in that's wonderful. Congratulations. In all India, across about 3,000 to 4,000 colleges, of whom they would normally sample out 100, 200 top ones, if you are rated as 28, very, very close to, I think, next to Welding Car or something like that. And number 2 in Pune. This is what I am told. Am I right, sir? Congratulations. So these recruiters classify you as 1, 2, and 3. So I think you can imagine, you may be figuring out now, if not one is reserved for these IIMs and all those kind of things. And you will have some interesting news here. One interesting thing was, there are in my interviews with placement, people who recruit, they said that we want to say that there are some dimensions on which we prefer non-IIM students, very clearly, and I will come back to that. What are the areas where they prefer non-IIM students and things of that kind? That is one of the questions our friends were asking me, that what is it that makes IIM different than all of us? I said, well, there is nothing, it is in your mind. For a good student, there is nothing which differentiates. Some experience the differences between the candidates of different schools. Some say that a few of them don't see any differences. This is a good news. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, some of the recruiters said we don't find any difference between 1, 2, 3. In fact, they said sometimes the Tier 3 school candidates are far better than Tier 1. Good news for you. Which means, I want to say, it is not always the school, it is you who seem to make the difference. For a good student, the school is a platform where you can do wonderful things. For a bad student, no matter even if you put the person in IIM, he is not likely to do any great thing and things like that. So that is what I would say. A few of them mentioned some advantages of candidates from lower rung or level 3 business schools. Where there are differences, they are attributable largely to entry-level profiles of students. You take a competent fellow, and what is great in terms of value addition? Anyway, the fellow is competent, because choose out of 5 lakhs of people, you choose about the top 1,000 and they join one of the IIMs. So there's nothing great, that is what they said. Okay, it is just, those from IIMs and equivalent are perceived as high on analytical skills. Some schools are considered as better in developing certain types of functional experience. These are some of the voices. I am not going to be spending too much time on that, but just for to give you a flair of it, it's fair to say that there are no differences we find among the MBAs we take from different institutes. From the kind of schools we take, they are more or less similar, and if any difference are there, they are taken care of through our induction. Very interesting thing. So if you have a good induction program, that is meant to take care of it. We take good number of candidates in HR from 3 institutions. We have taken around 30 or so in last 5 years. Our analysis indicates that there are no differences in the competency levels of the candidate from these institutions. Their performance was rated in the last few years by various HR groups, and we find their performance levels to be similar. Our internal processes are strong, and hence the differences may not surface much. In one of the seminars, I was having a casual interaction with somebody. There was a group of executives who were sitting in IIM campus. They were discussing about various B schools. And one of them took the names of some of the Pune-based business schools. And he said that, look, these schools really, I mean, they have mushroomed and they are not doing enough of it. Then another person said, but have you, do you know about one institute in Pune? He said, what institute? Balaji Institute. This is actually what happened in a classroom in IIM Ahmedabad. The group of executives. Balaji. He said, what is about it? He said that I took summer trainees from that institute. The amount of care faculty took to make sure that the students went on time, followed certain discipline, carried out the reports and submitted the report is marvelous. This was the feedback that they said. It was marvelous. That is when, about a year ago, the desire to visit your institute got planted in my mind, sir. That is what was the most important kind of thing. So I think it's a very, there are differences among the three-tier business schools. The main difference is the integrity levels. Students from tier 1 business schools take less shortcuts. Three students have more entrepreneurial abilities. They are more aware of the ground realities and thus able to solve real life problems. One of the things I found, in fact, I use it to compare IIM, A, B, C, XLRI and all these institutions almost about 25 years ago. I'm an educationist by background. This particular thing interests me. So when I compared, I use it to say this. IIM Ahmedabad, the students are very difficult to get along. And IIM Calcutta students are easy to get along. And XLRI students are even easier to get along. Why? This is because I am Ahmedabad student at the end of the 2 years seems to believe that I have made it. And everyone else in the organization is there to welcome him and learn from him. Whereas the Calcutta student, he is accustomed to, see, I am Ahmedabad is case method. They analyze everything, they tear it into pieces. So when you join a company, you are seeing every opportunity as a case and analyze it and then raise this is not right, that is not right and so on. Naturally, you give a feeling that you are a headstrong fellow. You are not willing to learn. Whereas Calcutta followed lecture method, that is MIT. So lecture method means you just listen. And the chaps who graduate from there are willing to listen because they are accustomed to. So they are better. XLRI are fairly humble, like I think the priestly atmosphere that gets created there and so on. That is why the HR is wonderful there because they are interpersonally competent. But I'm not sure now, I think if XLRI tops, the HR guys there probably think that they have also arrived. They seem to be graduating to IIM level and so on. So what does that leave institutions like Balaji? I think I would say that you should be much more wonderful, easy to get along, continuously learning, and carry no air with you. And at the same time, if you had been a good student during the 2 years, you probably would know a lot more than what any of these other institutions. So it depends on you. It is ultimately the student. That is what the placement interviews or the recruiters interviews so far have talked of. There are a whole lot of things in terms of emotional quotient, aesthetics of Indian students is weaker as compared to Western business schools. In terms of leadership, there is not much difference. This is what is, I think, one of the things from a MMZ. I will skip all these voices from recruiters, but I am just going into typical roles. This is what I think you were mentioning, may be interested. What is it that when you graduate the MBA, as an MBA, the recruiters expect you to do? Some of the roles are field supervisory roles. ASM for a state, retailing manager for a territory, etc. Brand management roles, product management roles, merchandising management roles and so on. For operations, supply chain roles, sometimes executive assistant to your top level director and so on. All these roles involve dirtying your hands. And you cannot become a senior executive, successful senior executive or a leader unless you begin dirtying your hands. I'm sure you all know the case of Dr. Kurian. Dr. Kurian, for 2 years, he went abroad, he was sponsored by government scholarship. When he returned back, he was posted in Anand. He wanted to avoid the posting in Anand. He tried all his tricks. Finally, government said, nothing doing, you go to Anand and work in a cooperative. So he went there, and there, I think he was very eager to get out, spend time. I think after 6 months, he was successful in getting his posting changed. But by that time, he got in touch with this Tribhuvan Das Patel, who started taking his help in terms of the dairying industry. And that is where he understood there is a need for, there is an opportunity, there is a need for working and doing better than the Paulson and Brown. I think they were running the dairy there. So Tribhuvan Das Patel sought his help. He decided to stay on, and after he stayed on, you know what happened. I think he has really created white revolution, and a country which is short of milk, I think he made surplus milk, and not only that, he created the Institute of Rural Management and things of that kind. So unless we begin our career by dirtying our hands, and that is true with everyone. Narayan Murthy was a programmer. When I joined IIM Ahmedabad, he was just leaving IIM Ahmedabad. He was a programmer like anyone else. He used to interact. Even today, when he goes to IIM, he has meetings with all the people, has potluck lunch or dinner with all his colleagues who used to be like him and things of that kind. Kiran Majumdar Shah didn't get an employment because she, being a woman, and a woman brewer is something unheard of. When she returned back to Bangalore, nobody was willing to give her a job. Then she started her own kind of an enterprise, collaborated with somebody, and today I think you see her. Dirtying your hands, I think this is what the industry expects. If you say that I've already arrived and I know now you take concepts from me, learn strategic thinking, international business, marketing from me, I will decide the pricing of your product and things of that kind, nobody is going to. They think that keep quiet and do what I want you to do. And with vengeance, they give you lower level kind of a work. But if you say, sir, I want to learn, I will tell you a very interesting story of a student, and it's a different kind of a thing. That story I'll come back later. Project management roles. In sales and marketing, product management, territory manager, etc., project management roles. In HR, they said we rotate candidates to various functions and locations in the first year. Now in HR, those of you who are specializing in HR, I've always said this. Human resource development deals with strategies of growth and development. Personal management dealt with providing stability in an organization. Industrial relations deals with bringing peace to the organization. Now I always say, you cannot have growth unless you have stability. You can't have stability unless you have peace. So I say, starting point for any HR person is to perform industrial relations roles. Peace, stability and growth. IR deals with peace. Personal management or HR management, which includes salary administration, performance appraisals, recruitment, etc., they deal with stability. And human resource development, which includes, I think, training and development, organization development, culture building, competence building, commitment building, all these deal with growth. You can't perform by joining a HR department, a growth role, unless you have tasted, you got baptized with blood. And that is what I think recent events that have happened in places like Maruti indicate, that look, you may be the most wonderful company on earth, you may have the best practices in the country, you may have the HRD chief who is the president of the National HRD Network, but that does not stop the labor from doing what they want to do. And they have done what they want to do. And for 1 month, the entire country was struggling to come to grips with this problem. And this is not the only one company, many companies. So for HR people, I say, starting job is going to be IR. Don't say that, look, I am an MBA, I will straight get into recruitment, I am going to be recruiting people. We come to that later. First, understand the organization, learn about the organization. So they say we rotate. Job rotation is common among the other roles also. Get hands dirty in data gathering, analysis, etc. Understand A to Z of company's goals and operational models. Focus more on improving business. For those recruited from IIMs, for example, they said we assign strategic roles and things of that kind. You don't worry about what they do with IIMs. For MBAs from other institutions, we assign analytical roles where they need to do analytics for ratings. They may work as rating analysts and so on. Okay, so that's wonderful. Typical roles, another company said financial management is one area, though we prefer largely those with CA and other related background. MBAs can help in providing larger and holistic perspective. So I think you add what a CA cannot add. Corporate and strategic planning. They have done competency mapping and identified competencies. They can be put into any function, they said. Quality and systems is another area. Brand building and public relations and corporate affairs is third area, and so on. They can play audit and diagnosis roles. There are a whole lot of roles. I think I will not spend the entire time that I have. I'll pass this on to you so you can put it somewhere and maybe in your website so that everyone can access this. And then these are all the roles so that you know what is it that the recruiters expect. I'll go on to the competencies. Most frequently mentioned competencies desired for MBAs. Drive for results, team working, willingness to be hands-on. These are the most important things. Willingness to learn from other experienced colleagues who may not be MBAs. Execution focus and perseverance. Analytical approach compared to other non-MBAs. innovative approaches, passion and commitment of the assignments, developing team members, domain knowledge, soft skills, ability to influence seniors and top management, have conviction of their own kind of a knowledge. You need to have business knowledge, language ability, presentation skills, ability to analyze and write reports. You should be able to analyze and see the big picture, adaptability and desire to do work assigned to them. When you put them into jargons, you need to know thinking, ability and willingness to select and apply a structured approach, relating, doing, influencing. These are the kind of competencies. Business acumen, networking, partnership, capability building. I think you will get all this. What MBAs lack? There are differences observed between the business schools. The MBAs from top schools lack holistic and integrated view, ability to dirty their hands, openness to learn from others and particularly non-MBAs, willingness to dirty their hands and get involved in operations, commitment to organization, emotional intelligence, entrepreneurial thinking. Okay, so this is a good news for you. See, the top schools lack this. If you can show this, therefore, if you can be entrepreneurial, if you stick to a company and don't keep changing your job that frequently, and openness to learn, address people as sir, willing to learn and demonstrate number of things, then I think you will probably progress faster than those from the top schools. MBAs from other schools lack depth. Okay, analytical skills, general business knowledge, global perspectives. This can be compensated. For the faculty, I would like to recommend that you can do something by making sure that the depth is available, analytical skills are available, use a little bit of case method here and there, global perspectives. I think some of you may stand an advantage because those of you who are doing international business, I think you will get quite a bit of global perspectives and so on. Somebody said, as far as I'm concerned, I must say that there is a big gap between what jobs they prefer to do and the jobs they land into. The gap widens sometimes when you go up in the hierarchy, as one compromises to venture into such jobs as if there is no further options left. Product management skill is very weak. Retailing skills are limited. Everyone is more enamored by brand management and brand communication. It's good news for you. You're asking me this question, that on retailing, what is the future? I think it's a wonderful future. But you need to be dirtying your hands. You need to start from the bottom. Don't say, I will decide the strategies and things of that kind. Now, this is where I would like to mention the little story, is my experience that I've had. One particular year, I had 2 MBAs toppers from our institute, both IIT graduates and also topped in MBA, and both of them joined as executive assistant to heads of marketing. One joined in Bangalore as an executive assistant to general manager marketing of one company, and another joined Bombay as executive assistant to vice president marketing of another company. Both of them in those days, this is a 10, 12 years ago, about 15 years ago story. 6 months after they joined the company, I used to offer a course called Management of Formative Years, how you make sure that the first 6 months to 1 year of your job you do well. I went to interview them to collect their stories. I went to the chap in Bombay who was working with Vice President Marketing as executive assistant. And I said that, look, I want to make this case study. What do you think of your job? He said, Professor, what can I say about my job? It's bad. It's atrocious. I'm not very happy. I know you will be disappointed to get this kind of a response. This company is great. They came to the campus and made all kinds of promises. And they gave me the impression that I can use all the marketing and business policy knowledge I have acquired in IIM. Being an IIT graduate and from IIM, I came with great hopes to this particular company. And what I am doing, sir, if I tell you, it's really a shame. I said, what is the matter? What do you do? He said, sir, I'm treated like worse than a secretary. I am supposed to maintain the diary, the calendar of the vice president marketing. People who come to see, when to see, what room to be fixed and all those kind of things. I am supposed to book hotel accommodation for the clients, both the vendors as well as some of the customers who come to see him. And all these clients have all kinds of peculiar demands. I spend a lot of my time surveying hotels, making sure that they get good accommodation. After that, following with the finance department so that they settle the bills. And sometimes when they are in the hotel, they call me up and they complain about the hotel they are not happy with. It's a miserable kind of, it looks as though this is the kind, IIT graduate, topper in IIM Ahmedabad, this is what I'm doing, sir. Then the third thing, my boss asks me to organize meetings. He has weekly meetings, he has monthly meetings. I'm supposed to book the meeting room, boardroom, make sure that the coffee and tea are served there, make sure that the overhead projector is ready. Sir, these are the kind of things. I am worse than a clerk. I am not at all happy with this particular kind of a company. And these companies, you must be careful in terms of not allowing such companies to come, but I can't, I have to be here. And he poured, and I was very upset, very depressed. At the end of it, you don't want to see this now. Then I went to Bangalore. And when I met this executive assistant to general manager of this company, I said, how do you feel? I was expecting something like this. I said, maybe this is how the industry is. I have to tell the students. He said, great. First response, great. Professor, it's a wonderful job that I am. I said, very good. Yeah, what do you do? He said, I'm doing a whole lot of things. And he said, recently there was a discussion on this, and we fixed the price of this particular kind of a product, and I had a hand in that particular pricing of the product. I said, this is wonderful. I influenced the thinking of my seniors. I now have a whole grasp of how this company's marketing operates. And I keep suggesting to my boss, what are the kind of things that he should do? I set nowadays even the agenda for the meeting. I said, you are a lucky chap. And then I told him, but your colleague, this is what he told me. He looked at me and he said, Professor, I think it's very interesting to hear that my colleague there in Bombay is doing all this. Sir, I also do all those things. I am doing all those things. I did those things much more in the first 3 months. But now I made my role got changed by virtue of whatever I have done. I said, that's an interesting story. Tell me a lot. He said, sir, I book hotel accommodation for all the clients who come to see the general manager marketing. But by now I have the entire list of hotels, I have the list of preferences of these, I have the list of the kind of prices that are charged, I have the list of travel agencies. All that I need to do is to tell this to the secretary and the finance department, take their help and supply the list, they do the job. So first 3 months he used all his MBA knowledge and worked out very systematically and organized everything. So he has his fingertips on this, he did all the work. He said in the beginning, my boss used to ask me to organize the room for the marketing weekly meetings. I did that. That is a part of our job. Whom else will he depend upon? So I organized the meetings, and in the beginning, at the end of it, he used to tell me, yeah, now take down the notes of the meeting and fare it up and present it to me. So first few meetings I did that, and the next time I drafted the minutes somewhat differently. I said, sir, I think this decision you have taken probably is not the right decision to do. I sat with him, sir, if you permit me, I will record the decision in a different kind of way. And he said, why? So we had about half an hour discussion. I took Kotler's book and suggested something to him, and then he took interest in it. He said, you have a point. And therefore he said, okay, write it. He talked to people and changed the decision. After that, every time he started an agenda, he would discuss with me. Now the agenda is set jointly by us, and minutes are written after the meeting is over, largely by me, and I quite often put what I think is the best thing to do. So he is influencing the thinking of the boss. And he said on the calendar, my boss used to ask me to maintain his calendar. After 2 months, I did an analysis of his calendar and I suggested to him, sir, 70% of your time is going on wasteful kind of telephone calls. These are the kind of people who are calling you. This is how you are probably, I am not sure if you want to do this. Why don't you pass some of it on to him? I gave him a feedback. So what did he do? In 6 months' time, the same job which was given to the executive assistant in Bombay, he converted into, he brought his own kind of a credibility and so on. So the conclusion I have drawn was, it is not the company, it is you who seem to make a difference. And that attitude, the institution may not always give you. And that is entirely up to you. And in fact, that is what I have written. I don't know if some of you will get an opportunity to see my book. I have written recently a book for IIM Ahmedabad. The book is called Managers Who Make a Difference. It's available. It just costs about 200 rupees. Random House published it. In fact, IIMA started this series in which I think faculty members are now writing books meant for non-MBAs so that we can pass on all the knowledge. I classified managers into 4 categories. First category I called as doers. The same thing I will apply to students. Doers. Those of you who are sitting here because you are asked to sit and trying to listen because you may not have been asked to listen. There is no paper. Okay? No paper to be written. Or doers. Those people who do what they are asked to do are called doers. And most corporations are run by the doers. They only need a manual of instructions or a strong boss who can constantly tell them, do this, don't do this. These are doers. Always better, want to do faster, want to do more, and things of that kind. There is a third category of managers who surpass the second category, who identify they are achievers, and after achieving something, they create space for themselves to do something which they were not asked to do. First 2 categories do something which they were asked to do. Second category does it better. The third category does something more. Like Kurian was never required to set up the NDDB, but he set it up. He came to IIM and said that why do you spend 2 years and government money and resources? In those days, the tuition fee in IIM Ahmedabad used to be 500 rupees and for 2-year education. And the government used to spend about a couple of lakhs on each student. So he said that government is spending so much of money. Why do you want to, at the end of the 2-year education, go and sell soaps and shampoos? Most students used to go to leave us. He said, you are selling soaps and shampoos. Why don't you go to rural areas and do something? This is wonderful. Some of the students said, no sir, that is not meant for it. No, we know, we aspire. He said, all right, if you don't want to do it, I'll do it. He went back and started IRMA, Institute of Rural Management. Of course, he took the help of IIM Ahmedabad, Ravi Mathai and team, but he started. So, every issue that you come across, you see it as an opportunity. So was Kiran Majumdar Shah. No bank was willing to give her a loan. He said, you are a woman and brewer, what will you? Even the so-called ICICI bank, they said, no loan. She started it in her own kind of a shed and then I did wonderful things. So was Narayan Murthy. His own team wanted to leave him. They said, we want to sell. Nothing was happening, 8 years, 9 years of Infosys. They said, we'll sell our shares and we go. So, okay, I'll buy your shares. I'll sell my wife's gold and then buy your shares. They said, if Murthy wants to buy our shares, there must be something in it, so we'll stay on. So that is how they stayed on. And then, you know, the Infosys and so on. So I think the third category of people are the ones who convert a problem into an opportunity. And they think differently. And this is not the property of anyone. I think any one of you, every single student in this room can think differently. You don't have to only go for jobs. You can think of what kind of wonderful opportunities are there. One way to think is to which company can I join as a retail marketer. Another way to think is what can I do to influence the thinking of others. Why can't I be an entrepreneur? I think there are wonderful things that can happen and things like that. These are the people whom I call as visionaries. Like I came across in IIM Ahmedabad, there was a student who I keep mentioning about it. Just last year we invited him. 2 years, he BITS Pilani, and then after that IIM Ahmedabad. 2 years he worked, and then he went to work in a Deutsche Bank or somewhere for the summer training. And he came back and he said that I don't want to go for placement. Why? Because 2 years of work experience and what I have seen in Germany, where I was working as an intern, and what my girlfriend tells me about the company where she is working and what my colleagues tell, all deal with only one typical way of managing life. And that is, how do you please your boss, how do you follow his instructions and things of that kind. I don't want, after all this, being a BITS Pilani and IIM graduate, I don't want this life. I want to do something different. And he went around searching. Then one day it occurred to him, he was born in a family where his father was DGM with one of the public sector companies. And by virtue of working with public sector, every now and then he used to get transferred. So he got exposure to different communities. He said, I was lucky to go through a good school. You know, normally public sector, particularly when you are colonies, you have the Delhi Public School or Bharati, they have a wonderful kind of school. He said, I was lucky to go through a good school. That is how I got into BITS Pilani and later to IIM. They must be highly talented people who don't have an opportunity to go through a good school. So they must be in rural areas. Why don't I do something to bring out the talent of the people in rural areas? So the idea occurred to him, the most important thing that is lacking in rural areas is facility to teach science and mathematics. So he started a company called Butterfly Fields, whose job is to come up with simple models of teaching science and mathematics to 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th standard students. He gathered a group of IIT students. They are all busy they have come up with some 3,000 odd different types of lessons, methods and so on. Ultimately, he will be reasonably a good financial success. But he thought differently. And we have covered this in one of the magazines that we published. I've just passed on this magazine called Perfect Professional. And we like this, I think we have covered many of these stories of some of these people and so on. So that is thinking differently. These are visionaries. Like my good friend Vijay Mahajan, he was my student in the class sometime in the year 1979 or 80. I think he thought differently. He said, no point giving professional management knowledge to corporate sector where everything is laid for you. You have to follow their systems. Now today's world is not that you will go and introduce a system. I think today's world is different. 30 years ago, if an MBA was recruited, the expectation was you go and introduce a system. Today there is already a system there, you have to execute it. So this chap said that, look, NGOs are not having the right kind of professional mind, so let me go and start. A group of them started Pradhan. After some time he found the most important thing people lack is finance. So he started Basics, a microfinance kind of an organization. If you read stories like this, I'm sure that you know of the book called Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish, or I Had a Dream, and so on. I think if you read these books, there are many, many stories. And these are not just a few, I think there are many stories that you come across. These are people who are visionaries. And everyone in this room can be a visionary. Management education spoils us. You know what it does? It makes us to be doers. You join a company and you say, what is the HR system I am expected to follow? No, bad. You can't be a change agent if you are a doer. You are a doer, then you join the 90% of those managers who are important for the corporation. I am not saying that they are not important. They are very important for the corporation. You will join that particular. But if you are an achiever, you will do a little better. You have a fast career and so on. But if you are a visionary, you don't have to. Now, you don't have to do it tomorrow. You can seek placement, go to a company, work for 2 to 3 years, but somewhere in your mind, if I face a problem, the way I am going to look at it is to think entrepreneurially, rather than to tell my company you are doing things wrongly, therefore you are not making enough profit and so on. That you may say, but besides that, you should be a visionary and things of that kind. That is what management education should give. And that is what industry values. Today, we are saying, now this is one of the complaints most companies have. In fact, I have circulated a short questionnaire, very interesting questionnaire. When I asked some of the line managers, senior managers, we are bringing out a special issue of Perfect Professional magazine. Now, some of the line managers have written an article on what is wrong with Gen Y. You all belong to Gen Y. Those who are born post-85, normally, I mean, there are always plus or minus. Those who are born in 60s and 50s are called Gen X. Those who are born in 60s and 50s, that is some of your parents, they like a company where provident fund and pension are there. And for them, if a company doesn't have a good pension scheme, it's not a good company. They will not join. But the younger generation, the moment you say pension, they stare at the company and you want me to work here for 35 years to get pension? Sorry, no way. Maximum 2 years, if you are nice, 2.5 years. That's fine. Because the younger generation, this is the internet generation or the mobile generation or the electronic generation, they are restless. In fact, just yesterday in my class, I was sitting at the back, I was showing them a movie. I teach a course called Intellectual Capital. This is one of the things I keep doing at IIM Ahmedabad. It's a part-time job. My full-time is, I'm chairman of my company, TV Rao Learning Systems. So I put the film and then went to the back, and I found half of the students are on their laptops doing something else. It didn't upset me, it didn't bother me at all. Because the modern generation is capable of doing, because I experienced in my company, one fine morning I gave to one of my consultants a task. I said, you finish this project. 2 days later, she was supposed to finish the project and pass it on to me third day. But 2 days later, I found her talking on mobile. And she was talking on the mobile, she was also typing on the laptop. And when I went to talk to her, I said, what happened to the project? She was talking on the mobile, answering my question and continuing on the laptop. So 3 things, I got wild. She said, sir, I finished it last evening itself. The task was over. And she is continuing her conversation. It's the capability. You are all given this capability to do 2 to 3 things at a time. Our generation, no. Sorry, we can do 1 at a time. If I am talking to you, then I am talking to you. That's it. I can't think beyond. If I have a mobile, then I have to either switch off the mobile or stop talking to you and then go on to the okay. The younger generation is totally different kind of. You are all. Therefore, you are endowed with this kind of a talent. That doesn't mean that you keep doing whatever you like. Okay, that's a separate kind of an issue you need to be careful about. So, if this is the kind of talent that you have, what are the implications for HR? The interesting kind of implications for HR. That's why we are conducting this survey. When the line manager said, I don't agree with some of them, I said, I'm going to Balaji Institute, let me test it out. So I said, I'll pass this questionnaire on to you, and then I'll get a few views about, do you agree with it? So, yesterday I gave it an IIM, I got some very interesting kind of results. I think it will be very interesting to compare whether Balaji Gen Y is different than IIMA Gen Y. In all likelihood, there is absolutely no difference. It is there in your mind and things of that kind. Okay, so that is the third, the visionary. I think you need to aim high. And the fourth one I call as missionary. Missionaries are those who pick up one single cause, work for the society, all through their life they are devoted to that. Kurian becomes a missionary. That way, Narayan Murthy also becomes a missionary. Abdul Kalam becomes a missionary. All his life, science and technology. And after he finished his term as president, single-mindedly is going to schools and colleges and influencing the thinking of the children. Now, do you have to be 65, 70, 80 years old to be a missionary? Not necessary. Some of you may already have a missionary spirit in you. You say, this is what I am going to do. Organizations offer phenomenal opportunities for missionaries. You know what opportunities they offer? 9 to 5 you work, 5 to 9 you are on your own. 5 to 9 is the opportunity the organization offers. By employing you between 9 and 5 and paying you the salary, they are releasing you from 5 to 9. 9 to 5 is larger or 5 to 9 is larger? 5 to 9 is larger. So you have phenomenal amount of time. If you are a missionary, you can't sleep. You are single-mindedly working on something. Now, how to be a missionary in a college? It comes through. You will start a body, you will start a club, you will start an association, okay? Or if some speaker comes, you are pestering that particular person, trying to get something from him and so on. So your missionary, your visionary, your achievement spirit gets to be shown. I think educational institution is a wonderful kind of an opportunity where you have to try out whether you want to be a missionary, visionary, or whatever you want to be and so on. So that's all about the placement and related parts of it. I have given you some thoughts about how to be a good student and how to aspire for the kind of things that you should be doing post this. I would rather prefer than to continue to lecture on the HR part of it or any questions, anything that you have in your mind dealing with HR. I would rather prefer to enter into a dialogue and stop here because I would like to listen to your questions and if there is something that I would like to. So friends, I would like to conclude by saying this. The education, the 2 years that you are getting here is a wonderful opportunity to conceptualize yourself as a doer and only do what you are asked to do and pass the exam, or an achiever to do better than somebody else, or to be a visionary, therefore come up with all kinds of interesting things and create something, or a missionary. I think this is entirely in your hands. And organizations value doers. They also value achievers. And society values visionaries and missionaries ultimately. So it is entirely up to you to set your kind of a goal. And HR policies normally are aimed at making you either doers or as achievers, not as visionaries, not as missionaries. So if you are joining a corporation which only expects you to do things that they want you to do, then that can become a limiting kind of a factor. Okay, I'll stop here, and I want to wish you all the best in terms of, I would like to see many, many visionaries coming out of Balaji Institute, and maybe missionaries and so on. And I'll be very happy to